What you're about to experience is one man's quest to see beyond the tumultuous period we're in and to envision what lies just beyond our grasp, yet well within our reach. Welcome to Larry Rifkin's America Trends, where the future has arrived, and it's just in time.
Welcome back to another episode of AmericaTrendsPodcast.com. I'm Larry Rifkin, and my buddy, my colleague, John Krofsick is with me. And, John, I've got to tell you, I mean, we all love the status of guru in our society, but it's not easy to become a true guru, is it?
No, I don't even know what a true guru is.
Well, is it somebody who is in a sitting position, a lotus position, someone like Buddha? I mean, we do elevate certain people to guru status.
We do.
How do you get that, though?
I don't know. Now, would Steve Jobs be a guru?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Steve Jobs could come out there in his jeans and his shirt as informally as he wanted, and yet whenever he was going to make a statement, you knew that it was going to change your life in some material way.
That's true. You're absolutely right.
So he was a guru.
He was a guru. Okay.
And, of course, our podcast suggests that we're going to be doing something about things that are trending. But I do want to be careful about this because trending now has a very limited scope. But we're not doing that. We're not looking at what's trending this hour or this minute or this week. We're looking at things that really go well beyond in terms of the impact that they have, that you'll still be thinking about these things. And hopefully we will have given you an insight into something that may be 10 or 20 or 30 years down the road.
Absolutely.
That's what we're
looking
hoping.
At the future.
We are.
But it's here today.
Well, I've got to tell you, today we have got an incredible guest on the program. And when we decide to put something up on our site, I mean, we really do pay particular attention to how serious these topics are. Not that we treat them or ourselves too seriously, but we want to make certain that for you, the discerning members of our listening audience, that you're going to get something when you come away from this. And back in the palatial offices of AmericaTrendsPodcast.com, replete with a couch, an old beat-up futon, a desk handed down from my family, or was it your family? I don't remember.
I don't know where that thing came from.
Well, we can't remember. A Royal typewriter, posters from Woodstock, and, of course, the time that Dillon electrified everybody at Newport, and a few stubs of Newports from our DJ days, right?
Now, where did that 8-track machine come from, anyhow?
Well, you used to have an 8-track, but a 1-track mine. But listen, we've got to clean up the office for those big sales meetings we plan to have with advertisers, because thus far, John, we have broken through. We really have. There are so many podcasts about how to make money doing podcasts.
That's true.
And we did it.
We did it. Okay.
I got the first report. It's right here.
Uh-oh.
From Amazon Associates. And we want you to go to our store, please, and click through.
Yes.
And help us, because this will allow us to continue bringing you this incredible content. But thus far, let me give you the grand total.
Okay.
8 cents.
All right.
8 cents.
All right.
We're going to split that?
8 cents in the plus column.
You're not going to take the whole thing, are you?
I'm going to hang it up.
Where do you hang 8 cents?
I'll make a little plaque.
All right. You got to do that. But I'll tell you why we're going to succeed. And it's because we bring you people like Karen Dillon, who's going to be with us in just a moment. And she has this theory, along with Clayton Christensen, who is the aforementioned guru that we were talking about. And he was the gentleman who came up with this whole concept of disruptive innovation. And it's getting harder and harder to really stay in business, because the minute you think you figured it out, you've got it all set, and then what happens? Somebody, when you least expect it, blew you out of the water. You never saw them coming.
Right. That happens with a lot of products now.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, Netflix, for example. Remember the old days? And I remember somebody at our old radio station who used to get those DVDs in the red box.
Right.
And she would get them, send them back. I remember seeing them. And I said, how can this model really work? I mean, does this really work? Then all of a sudden, we saw that they changed their pricing and they were on the ropes. Then they changed their entire model and went to streaming. And who knew that they were going to become one of the most influential forces in all of media?
Right. They
Who
put
saw that?
All those DVD stores out of business. So, yeah, who saw that? That's absolutely right.
And there are so many other examples of this where you think it's the other behemoth on the block that's going to destroy you, and it's really something totally unforeseen. Well, I've got to tell you, Clayton Christensen told people that it is not really about the big guys. You really need to pay attention to those who come in on cat's paws. And he called that minuscule threats at the bottom of the market. Those are the things that you don't see that can really disrupt and innovate.
Well, I think because they can change. Big corporations have a trouble changing their
business model,
right, to the market, where small companies can come in and
maybe they know no better. They're not afraid to tread near the dinosaur. Well, I've got to tell you, there's another great example of that since you pointed it out, and that's the great universities, all these traditional places, and they couldn't see that any of these online courses were going to have any impact on them. And I remember reading about Yale saying, hey, we better put some of this stuff up online because there are people putting all kinds of content up. Well, this whole notion of disruptive innovation is really what Clayton Christensen has left to us. And he is a guru. There are CEOs who, after he built this concept of disruptive innovation, many books later at Harvard Business School, he had CEOs lined up literally at his door. They wanted to know, how do I avoid being the next one to be felled by some group that I didn't even know existed. So this guy really has the ear of business. So, John, you might say to me, Larry, is he done? Was that his one big idea? Were you going to say that to me?
Yeah, I was. Was that his one big idea?
No, John, of course not. That's how he became a guru. His thinking has progressed, and he's got a new theory, John, that we are going to unveil today on AmericaTrendsPodcast.com. And you're only going to hear it here from Karen Dillon. Now, she's the co-author of a book with him, Competing with Luck, and she is a protégé. She's a former editor of the Harvard Business Review. And in this book, she really helps him to express this theory of getting the job done. What is it that a company or a product really needs to do? It's the theory of the job that needs to be completed. Now, I'm not going to try to explain that, but it's pretty simple. But I don't think many people really think about it in a business context. So I think this is really going to be an interesting conversation.
Well, let's get her on the line and talk to her about this.
Let's do it right now. Karen Dillon. Well, the book is called Competing Against Luck, the story of innovation and customer service. And with us is Karen Dillon, who's got a great reputation on her own at Harvard Business School. But Clayton Christensen is the lead author of this book. And Karen, could you pay homage to your colleague Clayton Christensen and tell us, I mean, he has really been an innovator in this whole area of customer innovation and, innovation as it relates to companies. Explain what his history is and what his record is.
Well, the most important thing about Clay is he's one of the greatest guys in the world to start with. But, yes, he is one of the most respected academics in the world and has been considered a leading management thinker for decades. He's probably most famous for creating a theory called the theory of disruptive innovation,
right?
Which people know from his book, The Innovator's Dilemma. And that was the book the only business book that Steve Jobs allegedly kept on his bookshelf. It's a book that explains how and why it is that successful incumbent companies tend to fall off a cliff when there's a little threat from what seems like a just wannabe startup, and how that threat turns out to be a really powerful threat that disrupts the big incumbent business.
Okay, just to put it in really practical terms for everybody, I think they can understand if we tell the story of Kodak.
Sure. Well, let me tell Netflix and Blockbuster, because that one's even a little more recent in people's mind. So Blockbuster, most of us probably remember, you'd go to your video store on a Friday night, look around, hope to find something to watch. You'd put a couple of choices in your car, and then probably you'd watch them over the weekend, but maybe they never came out of your car, maybe you forgot about them. But Blockbuster was very successful in every town in America, and made a huge percentage of its money on the fact that many of us forgot to return them or didn't return them on Monday or the 24-hour period. It made a lot of money from people just holding the videos longer than they should have. Blockbuster dominated the market for entertainment like that for years, until at one of their investor meetings there was a question from an analyst, what about this little company called Netflix? And Blockbuster's answer was, it's a kind of a tiny, small market. It's a mail-order DVD service. What a hassle. Nobody wants that. And for us to invest in something like that, a cruddy little business, would take away from some of our powerful profitability. Again, a lot of it based on the fact that we all got charged late fees. So they ignored it. And the rest, as they say, is history. It turns out that Netflix disrupted Blockbuster, that what Netflix offered us was actually good enough and better, and they didn't make money from us forgetting to return fees. They made money from us continuing to be happy with and renew their service. And Blockbuster is now in Chapter 11, and we all have Netflix.
But Netflix then changed its model seemingly overnight, and went from mailing these things out. I remember those little mail bags going back right here at WHR. We had somebody in our sales department who loved the old Netflix, and all of a sudden the online streaming. So not only did they take apart Blockbuster, but in many ways they've now taken apart the studios and the networks.
They have done so much, and the founder of Netflix, Reed Hastings, is actually, I know, a fan of Clay's thinking and Clay's work and the work that we've done in this current book. They're so successful at identifying what customers really want to accomplish, what are they trying to accomplish, and that they've created their products and services around what we would call the job to be done, the job that customers are hiring them for, not around, their business is not built around, I want to see a movie. Their business is built around, I want to relax and I want to entertain myself in some way at home, and they understood that, so they've gotten better and better at competing against all those other things, movies and Blockbuster, because they've just done the job better for customers who want to relax.
Absolutely. If we could go back just briefly, because Kodak was such a monster and a part of our lives, and of course film, and we all used to, take it and process it. We can still picture, Kodak on those film containers. What happened to Kodak?
Well, it's a big and complicated story, and I actually happen to be the child of a longtime Polaroid manager. So
really?
It's all sort of interesting and complicated in my life. There's a lot that happened at Kodak, but one thing you could argue is that they misunderstood, again, they got focused on their product, on film, rather than what people were trying to accomplish. And so Kodak actually had some really early development that could have competed with Facebook and could have done a lot of things that we now do through other products, through, our phone cameras and things like that. They just got so focused on making better and better film and staying competitive that way that they lost the plot in terms of and a great technology company. But again, from our perspective, one of the key things they missed was what were people trying to accomplish, and they focused on the product, not the job to be done.
So now we get to competing against luck and the theory of jobs to be done. Explain this very succinctly for us.
Sure. It just at a simple level, the idea is that in spite of companies all around the world deciding and declaring that innovation is a top priority and billions of dollars are spent on innovation efforts, most companies, the vast majority of companies, would say they're not successful with their innovation. It's very hit or miss. Some of it they get right, some of it they don't, and they don't always know why. They feel like it might be a bit of a game of luck. You have to play enough of the odds, and then something will hit for you. Our theory, Clay's theory, which I helped him write in this book, is that that's not good enough. We can be better than relying on luck for getting innovation right if you understand the causal mechanism, why, what causes a person to make a choice to pick one product or service over another. And we believe it's not because they want to buy the product, it's because they want to accomplish something in their life. We call that a job to be done. And if you understand truly the job they're trying to accomplish with that product or service, that's when you will create the right and better and competitive advantage product over all other possibilities that they could choose to purchase to solve that job in their life.
Where is there an example that we could all glom onto of a company that was so focused on its product or maybe its genius within the technological sphere that it asked all the right questions except the most important one, which is, what will this do for somebody's life in terms of relaxation, improve their health, give them more comfort, whatever it is. A company that really said this is going to be gangbuster because we've broken through a wall in terms of technology, but nobody really wanted the product.
Well, I'll just think in general terms off the top of my head because people can relate to this. When you start seeing companies come out with new colors and faster speeds and adding, billions of more features and things that you can have, for example, on your phone, right? Most of us don't buy a phone for all of those things. Maybe it's fun to pick it out, but the job that we're hiring our phone to do is probably something far more simple. In my case, it's probably almost always to be in communication with my family, to be able to have one or two apps that allow me to not get bored when I'm waiting for something and to have a camera with me to capture memories. Those three things. So when you get, faster processors and all kinds of options, that I think those companies have lost touch with what actually causes the causal mechanism, a customer to purchase something over all other possibilities. So, we can all see it in the phones that we get offered every day. And when you get to the point where you don't even understand what all the new features and benefits are, then there's a fundamental disconnect, and they risk losing you either as a customer or ever gaining you as a customer because there's too much you don't really value in what they're trying to push at you, and you don't then see what the real core value of that product or service is.
It's interesting because we just had a problem with our washer, and we bought a front loader years ago, and my wife said it the other day, it's got about 10 different functions that we never use, so let's go back to the old top loader, let it agitate, let it just do its job with the settings that we have. We don't need all this stuff. So there we're going back from a technology that we were told was better, the front loader, and we're going back to the top loader. So that's an example of, you gave me more than I need, and now I'm going back to basics.
I think that's a really good example, and another one people might relate to or think about is the OnStar technology in General Motors cars. That's the thing where you call and there's a live person that can help you navigate or do whatever you want to do. When that first came out, General Motors saw that almost, they used to call it brochureware. It was just a cool thing to sell the car. And they had the technology and the capability for the OnStar to do everything. You could call and say, where's the best Italian restaurant near me? Or, people would call up and say, we're having a debate. Name the seven dwarfs. They would do all kinds. It was kind of fun, and it was a concierge. But it turns out that meant it was kind of nothing to anyone and everything to someone. It was not, it was not clear at all what would make someone want to continue to use that service and pay for that service. And each of those things individually probably had better alternatives anyway. It was when OnStar started to realize and figure out that what the people who were renewing that product were really doing was purchasing it or paying for the service for help me have peace of mind while I'm driving. Now, that sounds vague, but if you think about that from the company's perspective, okay, if I'm very clear, that's what matters to people. Every innovation that you create, the way you service that, everything you think about from GM's perspective, if it focuses on helping people have peace of mind while driving, that's very clear. So the things that they're going to create for you are in emergencies, in floods or hurricanes, you get all the services possible. It doesn't matter what plan you're on. We'll get you out safely. We can figure out the technology so that our cars are so sophisticated. When you have a crash or an accident, we can tell immediately if it's a life-threatening one or one where there might be serious injuries, and we get the right people to you. There's all kinds of things that they can do that make people feel really comfortable that they will have peace of mind while driving. That's very different than pressing buttons to have funny answers and find a good Italian restaurant, for which there are other options. So it was complicated, but also more simple and streamlined, and people began to understand what it really did for them.
If I go back just a couple of years to TomTom and Garmin, and I'll never forget the TomTom that we had the first time I had a GPS system really helped me out in places like Hawaii and so forth. And I thought, this is the greatest thing. And now today, I guess I wouldn't think about taking that out. All you do is ask Siri, I want to go here. And that's part of the phone. So So where they've taken something that somebody else developed and made it part of this little device that you have that does a number of things. As you say, you determine how many of those things you really need or want to use. What is that a case of?
Well, I guess I would say that's probably a case of getting the quest for any company to understand what job people are hiring their product or service to do is never ending. It's something you have to get better and better at, and the jobs evolve and people get better at articulating it. I'm guessing it's a case of the company trying to refine what it is that people are actually hiring them to do, and making sure that they then do it better than anybody else. So all of the component pieces you talk about, I assume, are part of creating a new sense of what the job is. And it may not, again, it's almost never about the function itself. It usually has social components and emotional components. There's probably something in what you talked about that relates to a bigger, more complex job.
Yeah, well, to save marriages. So you're not.
That's actually not even. It's true. I bet a lot of people are laughing hearing that, because I think that rings true for so many people. So that is a job to be done in help us get from point A to point B without having a fight. And I don't want to feel stupid or frustrated or drive too fast or all those things. So they've shaped everything around that. And I always, my personal standard is when you laugh when someone says something like that about a job, it rings true. It's true for other people too.
Absolutely. Mark, that's a question for you. We're on the line with Karen Dillon. We're talking about competing against luck and the great thinkers up at Harvard. Clayton Christensen, a legend in his own time. Mark, hi.
Hi, thanks very much for taking my call. I have one comment and then also a question. My comment relates back to your discussion about Kodak, and I've actually thought about that quite a bit over the years. And I think about a company like Kodak where their primary product was film, right? I mean, they just, for the longest time, their cameras were just ways to use the film, but they weren't really known as the camera people. There were a lot of other people that were the camera people. And I can just imagine a business meeting, with all the executives and someone walking in and saying, I got this great idea. Let's move into digital photography. You would think everybody in that room, their jaw would drop to the table, because they'd say, every bit of our profit right now is built into film, right? We dropped the film thing, and we're going to be half the size or a quarter the size. So they'd be very reluctant to make that decision. Where a startup company getting into digital photography, they don't care what effect that would have upon Kodak. And so they're much easier for them to get into that business. So that's my comment on the Kodak thing.
I think you're exactly right. That's what we call marginal thinking, that they make a decision based on what they can see as the short-term consequences or costs, and the short-term consequences of starting to disrupt themselves with digital photography versus film probably seem like a stupid and overwhelmingly foolish choice to make. Why would we do anything that reduces our long-term future and our profitability? That's marginal thinking. Turns out the full cost of that obviously was far more substantial, and it's really hard for companies to be willing to look at the full long-term cost without letting that short-term just become too much of a focus. One of the great examples of succeeding at doing this well is Apple. Steve Jobs has actually successfully disrupted his own company several times with the new products, and it's for the lack of fear of doing that has allowed Apple to continue to grow for so long, and it's extremely rare to be able to have that foresight of not seeing yourself as a product company, but again, seeing yourself as a job company from our perspective. And if Kodak had seen it through the lens of a job, it wasn't about film. It was about capturing memories or figuring out how to make the moment last or being able to share the memories, whatever it would have turned out to have been, which had nothing to do with film and everything to do with being able to capture and share an image.
Mark?
Right, and I'm sorry?
No, go on.
Well, I was going to comment on that. I think for that person, that person that wants to walk into the room and be the one with that idea, they might be walking into a situation that's going to be very career limiting for them, right? They might walk out of there and somebody's going to say, well, this isn't the kind of person we want. Here he's advocating we collapse our business.
Well, that's true. It does take an act of courage, I think, to go up against a machine that has one way of looking at it. But I think it's an argument that deserves to be made and can be made with, maybe you don't start at the highest level, but you start by bringing allies along and showing examples of it. I think a really simple way to have a discussion with people is, who are we really competing with? And if the examples that you come up with are all things that are, in the film category. You haven't defined a job to be done from our perspective, and we really believe the job to be done is the secret to long-term growth and competitive advantage. If you come up with, we're competing with film and we're competing with just having more people come to event, there are a whole bunch of things that create that same feeling that people are looking for, then you're beginning to think creatively enough about how do we make sure we keep and build future competitive advantage. It is a hard thing, but I think you want to, have the courage to at least, think through the argument that way and put on a different set of lenses and show examples of companies that have success, like Apple, have successfully done that.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Competing against luck. You got to get the book, The Story of Innovation and Customer Choice. Mark?
Great, thanks, Larry.
Okay, thank you. By the way, it's fascinating because you say people hire companies to do a job, and that's why the name of some of the most successful ones, such as Google and Xerox, become verbs. Explain that.
Yeah, that's the ultimate competitive advantage is when people instantly, they have a job to be done in their mind, and they instantly think of your product or service. It's become synonymous with that. Google, right? We all know Google means to go online and look up something. You Google yourself. You Google options. You Google whatever. If you have achieved, we call it that being a purpose brand. If you have reached a level where people think of the product or service as synonymous with the name of your company or your product, they're not even going to think of shopping. They're not going to think of competitors. They just will go straight to you. That's the ultimate competitive advantage, and that's really what you want to do. Xerox have the same thing. Google's the same thing. Uber has become one. They're instantly synonymous with the job to be done. Thus, customers will just hire you without competitive price shopping or anything like that. They'll just go straight to you, and then you've built really enduring competitive advantage.
Now, Mr. Christensen says even great companies can veer off course in nailing the job for their customers and focus on nailing a job for themselves. And he cites the example of Campbell's Soup and V8 juice. Explain that.
Yeah, the gist of that idea is that it's really, when you're looking for new ideas, you can get more steeped in understanding a job to be done, and you're really in the mind of people and what they're trying to achieve, and you can create a great product with that. When you create and have a successful product, it's really easy to get sort of caught up in seeing it just through the lens of traditional competitors and categories and wanting to become more profitable and losing touch with the reason people hire your product in the first place. His example is personal to him. He remembers when V8 came to his office and they were talking about how to kind of get back on track when they were seeing themselves as competing unsuccessfully with all these the proliferation of sodas and other kinds of soft drinks at the time. How do we compete? We taste like tomato juice and it's healthy, and nobody wants that when you could go down a couple rows over and buy Coke. And they were able to use the jobs to be done thinking to reframe their challenge. They're not competing against Coke. Nobody drinks a V8 instead of a Coke. You take a V8 instead of having, an extra serving of vegetables at lunch. It makes you feel good about yourself. It's not a choice between lemonade and V8. It's a choice between spinach and V8. And guess what? Spinach looks better through that lens. And when you think of it that way, you change how you market and what you promote about and what you even put into and develop in terms of something like V8. You're competing against vegetables, so you can win that competition. You probably can't win against Gatorade. His sadness is that he understood it from the outside. He doesn't have inside information. Is that over time they lost that sense of competition and they've started to put themselves back into the competition with the traditional soft drinks, and they've created a whole bunch of different sort of permutations of V8 that do seem to be competing directly with soft drinks and things like that. And that, to us, through the jobs to be done lens, is just a losing proposition. You can even see the commercials on television now where kids go, "Oh, that tastes really great. I'd really have it." Maybe that's back to it's that or spinach, but it's probably trying to say, get your kid to drink a V8 instead of a soda. And again, that's a tough battle.
Now, you point out, of course, that Amazon, and they've done so many amazing things and continue to, that this notion of if you order within the next 2 hours and 32 minutes, you'll receive your product on Tuesday. And that isn't Amazon simply trying to keep you posted. It's a way for the company to keep their focus on what it is that matters most to you as a customer.
Amazon is truly brilliant from our jobs to be done theory perspective and in many other ways too, but exactly. They measure three things all the time. They have an algorithm that can check that the price is the lowest. They measure that tracking, not from when it leaves their warehouse, because that's a lot of companies would just care as when has it been shipped. They measure all the way down to when does it arrive for you, because they know most people are shopping on Amazon because they want to be confident that they'll get it. They want to know that they'll have the lower price, and for them, the reviews are also incredibly important. I want to know that I'm not taking a chance on something. I don't want to go shopping. You're competing against me having to get in the car and drive to the mall, and maybe there are two options. So having reviews, knowing that you probably are going to get at least a fair price, and knowing for sure it will be here on Tuesday so I can bring it to the birthday party on Wednesday, those things are tremendously important to their customers, and they measure and track it and make it clear to us, their customers, that that's what they're doing. It's not about them, it's about us. And that is incredibly powerful, as you can see every Christmas.
Absolutely.
So many of us
No,
spend hundreds of dollars on Amazon, and reliably so. We can track it. We know that we can even return it with great customer. It's all done through the perspective of the customer, and they're fantastic through a job.
No, I have to agree. One more quick example, because we've got to run. I wish we had more time. Hiring the breakfast milkshake. Explain that one. It really is a wonderful example, and I never thought of this.
Well, this theory originally was born out of a project trying to figure out how to goose sales of milkshakes at a famous fast food chain. And the consultants who were brought in to study this couldn't kind of figure out any rhyme or reason to, like, who was buying when, was there a typical consumer, until they happened to notice that this odd phenomenon was happening, that a lot of people were coming in the morning between, say, 7 and 10, and one single person purchasing just a milkshake and leaving. So they were trying to figure out what's that, or how can we make people buy more morning milkshakes? Can we make them chocolatier or chewier? It wasn't until they started to get at the core question for customers: what job are you hiring this milkshake to do? And it's such an odd thing, buying a milkshake in the morning. And it turned out for so many people what they had in common was the job they were hiring it to do was make my morning commute more interesting. I'm alone. I'm driving in a car. It's kind of boring. I sort of want to treat myself. I don't want people to see me drinking this milkshake at 8, but I can drink it in my car. When they understood that, then you begin to understand, okay, now I know how I can sell it. I can sell more of them by making it easier, maybe at making them a touch healthier so you don't feel quite so guilty. Maybe the morning milkshakes are in plain brown cups so no one knows what you're drinking. All of those innovation ideas become far easier to understand if you've identified properly what job people are hiring it to do. And the milkshake, surprisingly, it was to make my morning commute easier. It wasn't anything else. I think it's very similar to the way many people buy iced coffee in the morning now. It's kind of an adult milkshake. It's a treat.
Yeah, well, I've got one sitting here that I've been nursing for years. Karen Dillon, thank you so much. Clayton Christensen, along with Taddy Hall, Karen Dillon, David Duncan, all brainiacs competing against luck, the story of innovation and customer choice. And again, think about it, whatever you're selling, and the theory of jobs to be done. I hope that really bends your mind in a new way. Thank you so much. You have really been instructive today and entertaining. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. She got the job done for the last half hour, right? By the way, if you liked this episode, please leave us a kind rating or a review on iTunes. Your review is so critical for us to continue providing this podcast, and it helps us with rankings and visibility so that more people can enjoy the content we're providing. By the way, don't miss a single episode of America Trends Podcast. Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher.com. And when you do subscribe, let us know on Facebook and Twitter. Our handle on both platforms, it's real easy, is @TrendsPodcast. We want to thank you personally for subscribing. Please send us your ideas and your questions for future episodes on America Trends Podcast. Is there an author that you would love to hear from? Or a subject you'd like to learn more about? Send us your ideas or your questions on Facebook and Twitter. You can direct your message to us @TrendsPodcast or use the hashtag #TrendsPodcast. You can also add an email address if you have a public one that you'd like us to give out. You can access our full show archive on our website at americatrendspodcast.com. For more information on America Trends and for the latest updates on our upcoming episodes, be sure to like our page on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. You can find us @Trends Podcast. Thanks again.